If you've ever walked eagerly into a room and proceeded to freeze, standing in seconds of utter ignorance, until you finally realize that you totally forgot about what brought you there in the first place, then this video's for you. And although there are in fact a lot of potential explanations for why this may happen, it's something that we all end up joyfully experiencing at some point or another in our life. That being said, there is no denying that there is an uptick on the occurrence meter as we accrue chronological years on this beautiful floating rock. And there just so happens to be some science around that, as well as some ways to delay this inevitable battle with your mind, which we're going to talk about today. And by the way, it was your keys. You were looking for your keys. Aren't we all? Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run LiftandBalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. Today, we are once again venturing into the wonderful world of our 5-pound mushy membrane, exploring a very distinct type of memory that we rely on to get us through that day-to-day grind, or adventure, depending on how you look at it. I prefer the latter. And we'll be doing this with some hot off the scientific streets new research, highlighting why remembering those mundane day-to-day things becomes more challenging as the years pile up. But as always, we hit on those potential resolutions as well. In this case, how you may be able to delay the decline and stay as sharp as Jimmy Neutron into your adult and golden years. I mean, how else would you be able to stay up on the latest Gen Z lingo without it? Or bussin' tea those 1 to 5-year-olds be spitting in 20 years. No cap. Moving on. So to do this, we must first start with a little primer on what working memory is and where exactly it resides in our cranial cabinets. The cool part is, you're using yours right now. When we think of memory in the brain, the instant attention for anyone somewhat familiar with 5-pound mushy membrane terminology is the hippocampus, the designated memory center of the brain, which ironically you used if you knew the region I was talking about before I said it. That being said, what most people don't know or really care to delineate, likely because they have other things to do in their spare time, is that this region is all about storing long-term memories and making those memories resistant to forgetting. Thus, where you put your keys before you chase the dog around the house for 5 minutes trying to get whatever it is in their mouth out of it is not a hippocampal duty. Which brings us to working memory. Think of this as your brain's whiteboard for temporary tasks, primarily taking place in the prefrontal cortex, or PFC, the area of the brain responsible for executive function, allowing you to remember things critical for your day, but not so much relevant for a multi-day, weekly, monthly, yearly time span. Because as we know, when it comes to those pesky walking keys, it's all about where you put them last. Thus, one of the many reasons working memory is kind of important. Here's where it gets cool. When something is truly important, this magical thing happens. We transfer this critical information as a function of deep sleep each and every night from working short-term memory to the hippocampus, aka off to long-term memory, while the rest gets pruned and forgotten. Just one of the countlessly cool things our brain does. Now, here's the not so cool part. As we humans age, it has been well observed that the cognitive gears gradually accrue some rust, and ultimately becoming a major liability inhibiting quality of life, self-independence, and thus longevity. With working memory being one of the first to, well, be forgotten, as research has displayed that working memory decline is typically one of the first fundamental aspects or signs of cognitive aging, showing impairment in the critical prefrontal cortex and nearby frontal areas where individuals are tasked with taking action on short-term relevant information, with one of the best displays of this being the unfortunate scenario of brain injury, where there's been a clear connection between lesions or inactivity of the prefrontal cortex and severely impaired memory-guided behavior, which begs the interesting yet intriguing question: why and how is this exactly happening? All right, fine. 2 questions. Questions that this new 2023 study aimed to shed some light on, or at least one of them. The second, or the why part, we'll take some educated pontifications about in just a little bit. This study used a mouse model to investigate how the prefrontal cortex changes with age and how these changes relate to cognitive decline, having a specific focus on working memory. They did this by tasking young, middle-aged, and elderly mice with a memory challenge while observing and manipulating neurons in the PFC with calcium imaging and optogenetic manipulation. So, what'd they find? Well, first, that the older the mice were, the more disrupted codon patterns there were between neurons. Second, the older mice had weaker communication between neurons involved in memory maintenance. And third, these neuronal episodes impacting cognitive function surprisingly started in middle age, even though the middle-aged mice showed similar scores on the cognitive tests as the younger mice, suggesting that a decline in working memory coincides with the decreased ability of prefrontal circuits to integrate cross-modal information. An onset, however discrete, can most certainly start in middle age. Mice, that is. Middle-aged mice. So, what does this actually mean for us non-mice primates, and more importantly, how can we deploy strategies right here, right now to prevent or slow this decline? Let's explore. The black box, which is our 5-pound mushy membrane, is really quite amazing. And that's just based off the limited information that we have and know about it. Because the reality is there are many more mysteries than answers at this point. However, the one thing that has become very apparent is that this control center organ has the uncanny ability to adapt, rewire, and overcome, especially when placed in a biological position to operate efficiently, even at times being able to do something that was thought as scientifically impossible for decades: grow new neurons, as we discussed here. Ironically, in areas such as the hippocampus. The secret, as alluded to before, creating a biological environment for the brain to thrive. And interestingly enough, data to date suggests that this is done by using a mix of both good stress and deep rest. Let me explain. When we perform or partake in activities which cause a slight stress at the cellular level, a flurry of bioactive compounds are released and pathways are upregulated, which not only drive our cellular self to adapt and ultimately operate more efficiently, but also stimulate our billions of neurons to connect and transmit information in a more robust, efficient, and rapid way, strengthening existing neuronal pathways and priming the biological environment for new ones to be created. A phenomenon known as neuroplasticity, with 2 of the better known growth factors contributing to this being BDNF and MDNF. However, it don't stop there. In parallel, these stimuli also work against some of the biggest 5-pound mushy membrane detractors, reducing inflammation, oxidative stress, and the cellular components like leaky mitochondria which are responsible for them. So, by now, you're probably wondering, and rightfully so, what exactly are these good stressors? Well, a few of the most powerful happen to be activities such as exercise, phytochemical rich foods, strategic fasting, heat and cold stress, along with taking on cognitively challenging tasks, like your morning Wordle. While restorative pathways such as high quality circadian aligned sleep, real whole food eating, sunlight, nature, mindfulness, nasal breathing, and stress management practices clean out, de stress, uninflame, reinforce, and realign the brain, giving it a fresh neuronal state each day. Creating this combination of neuronal goodness, which puts one's 5-pound mushy membrane and its regional circuitry, like the working memory functions of the PFC, in the best possible state to stay efficient, functional, and alive for longer. The craziest part being that there has yet to be a pharmaceutical or therapy developed that delivers better outcomes for cognitive health and longevity than straight up unadulterated lifestyle. Something that you just so happen to have some pretty powerful control over. The same lifestyle, might I add, that when lived in accordance to modern Western societal norms, the ones that normalize 24/7 ultra-processed eating, staying extremely sedentary, being chronically sleep deprived, circadian disaligned, in a nature deficit, and chronically stressed, primes the brain for the exact opposite: dysfunction and deterioration. So do me a favor. Take a nice nap after you watch this video. Send this message over the neuronal wires from working memory to long-term hippocampal storage and start putting your mind in a position to do its thing, not only better today, but to stay churning at this high level for the long run. Because, to be frank, once you lose your mind, you lose yourself. And not even Mom Spaghetti can bring it back. Yeah, you get it? I'll show myself the door.